What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News. I'm your host, Emma Lingan, and I'm joined today by Michael Augello and Frank Zawrazky of the Hockey News. Got lots to talk about today, as we always do. So before we get into it, want to remind you that for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now you can get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. All right, guys, there are some reports, some rumors going around that Cutter Gauthier passed on a 4-year extension from the Anaheim Ducks that would have carried a $13 million AAV. Now, the Ducks, meanwhile, only have $9 million to spend right now. So if Gauthier doesn't sign a deal with the Ducks before December 1st, he's going to be ineligible to play, of course, for the remainder of the 2026-27 season and the playoffs. So, Mike, I want to start with you and just ask, what do you do if you're the Ducks in this situation? And how much do you think Gauthier is really worth?
Well, I think the Ducks, they offered the 4-year deal, if the report is accurate, because that would walk him to unrestricted free agency. I think they thought by doing that, they could pay him less. That was not the case. I think he wants big money. I don't think he's going to get anywhere close to Leo Carlsson because, Gauthier is a very good player, but he's a winger and Leo Carlsson's a center. And then there always is a difference. But with the cap going up as much as it is, he's probably going to try to get as close as he can to the top salary of a winger, which is Kirill Kaprizov at 17 or $18 million. I think it's 17. So, first thing the Ducks are going to have to do is move one of those veterans that we've talked about over the summer. It's going to be either Chris Kreider or Alex Killorn or Frank Vatrano to clear cap space. Because I think to get Gauthier signed, even to a bridge deal, it's going to cost him at least $13 or $14 million. I think he's going to end up being maybe 15 or 16 on a long-term deal. And, maybe he'll want to get as close as he can to Carlsson, but he won't. So it's going to cost him a lot. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I mean, Frank, if you're the Ducks, where do you go from here in this situation? Because obviously this is something you need to get resolved with Gauthier, but how much do you think he's really worth? And have they kind of backed themselves into a corner here with their financial situation?
I wouldn't say they've backed themselves into a corner. I'd say Danny Briere inadvertently backed them into a corner financially. Leo Carlsson's offer sheet tore the Anaheim Ducks summer to smithereens because now you're backed into a financial corner. Gauthier's worth 13, 14, maybe $15 million. But the problem is they don't have that kind of money to spend. The guy I would move would be Frank Vatrano. Frank Vatrano doesn't have the upside that he used to, and Killorn is a guy you want to keep around, as is Kreider. Kreider has veteran leadership. He can impart that onto the youngsters. I think you move Vatrano and you make a plea for clemency with Cutter Gauthier's representation and say, look, we like you in Anaheim. Take a discount. We're close to really exploding onto the scene and hope and pray that it works.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting situation. Like you said, Danny Briere and that offer sheet really complicated a lot of things, which goes back to, I know, Mike, you've said this. The Ducks never should have let it get to this point with Carlsson. They should have signed him to that extension earlier, probably could have saved themselves some money. But either way, an interesting situation to monitor out in Anaheim. The Ottawa Senators are another team I want to talk about today because Drake Batherson is another guy who is seeking an extension. He's seeking an 8-year deal before the cutoff, which is next month when the max deal length goes down to 7 years. He is seeking to get that 8-year deal before that point, and he and the Senators are still not reported to be close in their conversations, in their talks towards reaching that extension. So Batherson is also reportedly seeking a deal that's comparable to the Adrian Kempe deal with the LA Kings and Alex Tuch with the Washington Capitals. So both of those guys, of course, on 8-year contracts. Kempe is earning $10.6 million per year. Tuch is 10.5 per year. So Mike, in your opinion, do you think Drake Batherson is worth that? What do you think he is worth? And is there an importance to having him locked down for 8 years, or do you think the focus should be more on just getting him locked in to avoid having him reach free agency?
Yeah, in this market, I think that they should be running to the bank for 10.5 or 10.6 million. He's a consistent, he scored 20 goals or more the last 4 seasons, 33 last year, his career high, which is what Alex Tuck scored in Buffalo. He's a year away from unrestricted free agency, and he's really been underpaid the last few years. He's making around 4.4 million. So, I mean, I think what he's looking for is to sort of make up for lost ground. I mean, he's looking to hit a home run. And I mean, in a way, the 8-year deal is more beneficial to the Senators because you can spread the AAV out a little bit more with the 8-year deal, and that falls by the wayside after the middle of September. I mean, the situation for Ottawa is this: you lost your team captain. He did not want to go, or he did not want to go anywhere other than Florida. They got a good value in terms of draft picks, but now you have to fight against the perception that nobody wants to play in Ottawa. And how do you do that? You sign Batherson. You don't pay him everything that he wants, but you pay him as much as you can, and as much, you negotiate, but they have to get him signed. Otherwise, you may as well trade him now and get as much as you can for him because he's got a year left in his contract.
Yeah, I mean, Frank, if you're the Senators, how much do you kind of weigh the importance of trying to appease Batherson, give him that 8-year deal that he wants before the cutoff, versus just getting to a point where you can get him locked in for any amount of time and avoid letting him reach free agency, like Mike was saying?
I don't think the Senators have a choice, Emma. They don't have a choice. They just lost their captain. If I'm Cutter Gauthier, that is a very generous offer of 10.6. If I'm his representation, I'd be asking for 13. That's how good he's been for the Ottawa Senators. Comparable to Cutter Gauthier, who we just spoke about. I'd be asking in a similar ballpark as what Cutter Gauthier was offered by the Anaheim Ducks. I think he's that good. He's that valuable. And especially with Brady Tkachuk leaving for Florida, his value just went up. I don't know what Ottawa's front office is really thinking here by turning that offer down. I think it's a very team-friendly deal with the cap going up and the talent of Batherson going up. They should have taken that and run, like Augello said. Got to wonder what's going on in the Canadian capital.
Yeah, we're time is ticking here. Getting to the point with that cutoff to sign an 8-year deal is going to be, long gone. So definitely want to watch that situation in Ottawa. Moving over to New York, the NHL Network recently released their list of the top 20 defensemen in the NHL right now, and they have Adam Fox slotting in at number 13. So despite the fact that, he was injured for a good chunk of the season last year, Fox still managed to put up 53 points in 55 games for the Rangers last year. Beyond that, in each of the previous 4 seasons, he put up 70 plus points. And this is obviously he's won a Norris Trophy. The Rangers have fallen on harder times as of late, but Mike, when you look at a player like Fox, do you think it's getting to the point where he is becoming underrated for the kind of player he is?
I don't know if you can underrate a Norris Trophy winner who's 28 years old, who scored a point per game last year. I mean, I think, everybody said he had a bad year 2 years ago, and he had 61 points. I'll take that as a bad year. It's like, there are some teams out there that would kill for a number one defenseman of the quality of Adam Fox. So I don't think he's underrated. I think he's rated around where he should be. In fact, I think he may have slipped a little bit, from being a top 5 to top 10 defenseman. But I think if he has a good year this year with the Rangers, and he's going to get plenty of ice time, number one power play, quarterback time, he could jump back up into the 70-point range. And then I think maybe he's even back into consideration for a Norris Trophy, along with, the Hugheses and the Makars and the Dahlins and Miro Heiskanen. That's the level that he's been at, and that's a level I think he can get back to.
Yeah, I tend to look at Adam Fox a little bit in the sort of the same way as a guy like Roman Yossi, just becomes so consistent year over year that just because he's not the shiny new toy, you almost kind of underappreciate what he brings to the table. So, Frank, I want to get your thoughts on that. And do you think he is underrated, Adam Fox, around the rest of the league? And do you agree with Mike that he'll get back to that peak level?
I don't think he's really dropped off, Emma. I think the pieces around him just haven't been there to support him. And the reason I say that is Adam Fox, like you said, he is Mr. Reliable, Mr. Consistent. With all the changes that the New York Rangers have had, trades, coaching, he's been the one constant for them that has been a steady, stabilizing presence. And you bring in a guy like Albert Smits, who they take in the top 5. And Smits is the kind of guy that Fox can work well with. And I'm surprised Fox wasn't ranked higher, because without Adam Fox, the Rangers would be, and quite honestly should have been, in contention for the number 1 overall pick. If Fox got hurt, the Rangers are going to get that number 1 overall pick over Toronto. You can take that and run with it to the bank, because Adam Fox is just that important. And Emma, like you said, he's not the shiny new toy. But you know what? That doesn't make him any less impactful for the New York Rangers, who have had a revolving door of players on both the forward group and the blue line.
Definitely a reliable and impactful player for the New York Rangers. Looking at you mentioned, Frank, that maybe the Rangers could have gotten the number 1 overall pick over Toronto. One team that actually did lock up one of their first round picks from 2026 recently is the Vancouver Canucks. So Adam Novotny, he signed a 3-year entry level contract with the Canucks. They selected him in the 24th overall pick in this year's NHL Draft. So he's 18 years old. He spent last season with the in the OHL. He became just the 4th player in franchise history to record 30 plus goals, 65 plus points in their draft eligible season. So, Mike, looking at the Canucks right now, obviously this is a team that is rebuilding to an extent. I mean, they still have the Elvis Merzlikins of it all on to deal with on their roster, but it's life after Quinn Hughes here. I mean, do you think that, looking at Novotny and what he brings to the table and looking at the rest of the roster around him in Vancouver, do you think he plays a game for the Canucks this year?
He might play a game. I mean, Braden Coots, their first round pick from last year, played 3 games in the NHL. But I would, really look at, advise Vancouver management, don't be stupid. Don't rush your players. Cale Malhotra is playing in the NCAA this year. That's a smart thing. Don't rush your youngsters. You're throwing them to the wolves if you put them on a bad team, which is Vancouver is going to be a bad team next season, and just pushing them in there. I mean, if you want to give them a game or 2, fine. That's that, or a game or 2 at the end of the year after he's eliminated in the OHL playoffs if Peterborough doesn't make a deep run. That's fine, but let him play an entire season in the Ontario Hockey League. Let him play him in the World. Let him play in the World Junior. That's the best course of action. Anything other than that is just dumb.
Frank, what do you think?
I am going to disagree with Augello on this one. And the reason I say that is the Vancouver Canucks are going to be bad. But you know what? They've got a lot of young players. Wouldn't it be nice to ingratiate Novotny into the lineup with some of these young guys on a team that has zero expectations of doing anything impactful? I mean, look what he did in the OHL. The OHL, he was phenomenal. How is a player going to best develop? Are you going to stretch the player, or are you going to keep the player in his comfort zone? I say you bring him into the NHL, burn a year of his ELC, and put him with some of these younger players that Vancouver has. Whether that's on a top 6 role or not remains to be seen. But I think if you're drafting a guy and you sign him, why not bring him into the NHL? You have nothing to lose by bringing him into the NHL on a bad team where he can learn by example and slowly rise the ranks of the lineup. Now, that's not to say you should put him as your top line guy game one. No, I am not saying that. What I am saying is that you should burn a year of his ELC, bring him into Vancouver, and allow him to mesh with some of these young players that the Canucks acquired, specifically from that aforementioned Hughes trade.
Well, and you just want to see if a guy's a fit sometimes, or where he fits in the roster. And, sometimes a player and a team, they simply aren't the right fit. And a player, they may have the talent to thrive in a bigger role, but the team that he's playing for may have an environment, where he is not best suited to succeed. So, not every player is suited to every team's needs. Not every team is the right fit for every player. So kind of taking that point of view and taking it a little bit broader, Mike, we've seen a lot of movement around the league, a lot of trades, a lot of free agent signings this summer. Who are some players off the top of your head, anyone who you think will really thrive this season on their new team as compared to where they played the previous season?
Well, I'll give you one from each conference. Nick Paul had a really bad year with Tampa, mostly due to injury. Did not score at the level that he had in the previous years with Tampa. Now he goes to Toronto in the trade. He's going to be their third line center. I think, there'll be more pressure on him because he's playing in his hometown. But I think, he's been a consistent veteran, and I think will provide them a nice size and two-way ability up the middle. In the West, Mason McTavish gets out of the Anaheim situation where he signed that big deal with the Ducks. They were in a way, I think they were clearing his salary because they expected to sign Karlsson to a deal. Ended up they had to sign him for more, but now he goes to St. Louis. And he fits in. If he fits in at center, he fits in as a number 2 behind Robert Thomas. That's a nice place to be. So I think Paul and McTavish.
Frank, what do you think?
I'm going to go off the board with this one, and I'm going to say Devin Levi. And the reason I say that is Devin Levi didn't really materialize the way Buffalo anticipated. He had a few good stretches of play, but really didn't get the opportunity to show what he could do, in my mind. And Edmonton is in dire need of goaltending. Let's get that straight away. Devin Levi didn't live up to expectations. He didn't get as many opportunities as he wanted to, mainly because he was stuck in the American Hockey League. So Devin Levi is a guy I have an eye on. Jordan Kyrou is another one in Washington. Jordan Kyrou came over as part of that Connor McMichael trade involving the 16th overall pick. I think he's going to be a good upgrade for Washington's top 6. And surprise, surprise, I think Patrick Kane's going to have a 60-point season with the Chicago Blackhawks. He's coming home. He's going to be put on a line with Connor Bedard. You put a guy in the middle. Patrick Kane will put up 60 points this year.
Frank, I'll disagree slightly with the Devin Levi thing, because the reason he was in Rochester for most of the last 3 seasons is because they gave him the number 1 job, and he could not. He could not perform. He was really bad, and they had to go to Luukkonen, and then they go out and they sign Alex Lyon. I'm not saying that he can't, because I think he has the ability. He's the Mike Richter Award winner 2 years in a row, and they expected him to be a really good goaltender. But I think the thing that maybe conspires against him is Edmonton is a train wreck defensively, and Tristan Jarry, Freddie Anderson, Devin Levi. I don't envy any of them, because I don't think even with Mike Babcock as their head coach, they can straighten out that team's defense.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll straighten out the defense, but I think if you inject some young blood into the blue paint, it could galvanize the rest of the roster. And yeah, Levi didn't perform well in Buffalo, but keep in mind where Buffalo was at in the times that he was there. They were in a comparable position to Edmonton's defense in certain regards when he was there. Now, Buffalo is significantly upgraded, as you well know, Augello. So I think Edmonton, it's almost like a do-over for Devin Levi. It's a do-over for Devin Levi because he's seen what a poor defense was in Buffalo, and now he gets an opportunity to utilize the lessons learned in Edmonton.
Well, I'm going to go off the board here to settle this once and for all. And by settle, I mean I'm going to throw a completely different set of players out here. I'm going to say actually 2 players who I think are going to thrive with their new team, both on the same team this year. And that is Maverick Bourque and Jack Drury with the Nashville Predators. I think that Drury in particular is going to get a much bigger role than he had in Colorado with Nashville, and I think that he's going to really be able to show what he's capable of. I think that he will automatically slot in as the Predators' third line center, and I think we'll be able to see a lot more of what he can do than what we saw in Colorado. Moving on though, because we could talk about this for days. Want to move on. It's now been almost 10 years since the 2017 NHL Draft, big draft that year. The top 5 picks, in case anyone needs a reminder. Number 1, New Jersey picked Nico Hischier. Number 2, Philadelphia picked Nolan Patrick. Number 3, Dallas picked Miro Heiskanen. Number 4, Colorado picked Cale Makar. Number 5, Vancouver picked Elias Pettersson. So now looking back at this draft class, I think one of the answers may be pretty obvious here, but Mike, who would you change out of the top 5 if you could?
I covered that draft. Was at the draft combine. I was at the draft in Chicago. Everybody thought Nolan Patrick was going to be the number 1 pick, and Hischier ended up being the number 1 pick. Obviously, Patrick, with the history of concussions and injuries, he would be one of the ones that would drop out of the top 5. I would say, even though he has the most points of any player in this draft, that you would maybe put Pettersson out of the top 5 because of just the track of his career. I mean, he's struggled the last couple of years, and I don't know whether he can get back to the level he had in previous years. Makar obviously will be the number 1 overall pick now, but you have to remember at that point he was playing in the AJHL and he hadn't played 2 years in college, so that was a bold pick by Joe Sakic and the Avalanche, and they benefited from it. But I mean, Hischier I think would probably be number 2 over Heiskanen because centers are very valuable, and the guys I would elevate into the top 5 would be Nick Suzuki, who was drafted by Vegas, and second rounder Jason Robertson, who's just done nothing but score goals since being drafted in that draft.
Frank, any changes you would make to that top 5 now with the benefit of hindsight?
Yeah, benefit of hindsight, I think Pettersson stays in the top 5. I think, he's a very talented player. Again, a lot of change and turnover in Vancouver, so it's hard to really get a gauge on it. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'll go in order: Makar, Suzuki, Heiskanen, Hischier, and Pettersson.
I think that's a good top 5. Definitely lots, hindsight 2020. Always fun to look back at those older drafts and see how they've aged over the years. But want to kind of shift the focus back now to younger players. Obviously, those guys now were drafted 10 years ago, but looking now at kind of the young group of core players that are either already in the NHL or going to be entering the NHL this year. And The Athletic actually put out a list of the top 23 players who are under the age of 23. So obviously some big names on this list, guys like Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard, Matthew Schaefer, of course, the usual suspects. But again, 23 of these guys, I'm not going to read them all, but we kind of know who the main suspects are here. Mike, any player from this list of 1 through 23 who you think is going to make the biggest jump by the end of the year? Because some of the names on this list, for example, like a Caleb Malhotra, for example, who we mentioned earlier, haven't even played a game in the NHL yet. So who do you see kind of making a bigger jump on this list?
Yeah, I mean, probably the 2 players I think who are the leading candidates, and probably if you look at any kind of speculation in terms of odds for the Calder, these guys would be the top 2, and one would be Porter Martone from the Flyers, and the other would be Gavin McKenna. Whoever wins the Calder probably jumps into the top 10. Martone was fantastic late in the season for the Flyers, and then really impressed in the playoffs. And McKenna, he has the benefit of not having all the pressure being put on him because you've got Matthews and Matthew Nyes and Nylander in Toronto. There's a veteran core there, so not all the pressure will be on him. But I think those 2 players could significantly jump and have the biggest jump of any players on this list.
Frank, what do you think?
I like Porter Martone. I think he embodies everything that is and Danny Briere wants to be a Philadelphia Flyer. I think a guy that you mentioned in your rundown is Connor Bedard. I think he's going to take a huge step forward this year. Yes, he had the surgery. Yes, he's going to be out for a few months. But I think that'll work to his advantage because he's going to jump back into the swing of things on a line with Patrick Kane, Frank Nazar down the middle. I mean, there's your top line. You've got the greatest American ever to play the game of hockey with the number 1 overall pick for the Chicago Blackhawks a few years ago. I mean, this is a recipe for success. I have a lot of faith in the Blackhawks. I've gone on record saying that I believe they'll make the playoffs as a wild card team this year. And I stand by that assessment, especially bringing in Patrick Kane. So, yeah, Bedard's going to be out, but he's going to come back with a furious anger to be back out on the ice. And it's going to allow some of the pressure to be dispersed to other guys down the lineup. It's going to make Chicago a better team to have Bedard out for a few months.
Well, Bedard is at number 2 on that list. So I guess the biggest he could jump is up to number 1. But I agree. I think that we'll see a little bit more from him this year. Shifting gears a little bit here, I want to talk about the announcement from the NHL today that came out, a joint announcement with FC Bayern Munich, and they announced a first of its kind multi-year partnership, a strategic partnership that's designed to accelerate the growth of hockey in Germany and the development of Bayern in North America. So earlier today, as I mentioned, the NHL announced that it's going to be bringing more regular season NHL games overseas to Germany starting in the 2027-28 season. We've already seen that with the Global Series, but they're going to start again really adding more resources into that strategic partnership. So Mike, we've seen obviously there's some German players in the NHL, but it seems like few and far between. So what do you think on the growth of hockey in Germany and any other countries you see the NHL could be headed to next in terms of trying to grow the game in those other areas?
I mean, hockey in Germany has been sort of improving over the last, I'd say, 10 to 15 years. I mean, I think that one of the things is they have star talent. They have Draisaitl and Seider and Tim Stützle. But not to a lesser extent, JJ Peterka, who's a 30-goal scorer. I think they need to fill out their roster to be more competitive internationally, but it's going in that direction. You see more German players getting drafted in NHL drafts. Now, the NHL, they played regular season games in Sweden and Finland, in Czechia, in Germany. I could see them going to Switzerland because the Swiss hockey program and their league there is top notch. And I think a dark horse in terms of where they may play down the road could be Norway, because a lot more Norwegian players, now they're playing mostly in the SHL, but I think you could see with more Norwegian players getting drafted that the NHL recognizes that this is another Scandinavian country where hockey is growing.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Czechia. I think that's a big one as well. We've seen the Global Series games in Prague already. Frank, what are your thoughts on the growth of hockey in Germany? I mean, obviously the players Mike mentioned already in the NHL, but thoughts on growing that crop of talent, and then where you think the NHL might be headed next.
If the game of hockey in Germany was growing this well without the NHL's partnership, I can't wait to see what they do with it. I mean, you look at the German league. They have arguably, in my opinion, the best European league outside the KHL. And we're talking top to bottom. Because if you look at Sweden, yes, the SHL is a fantastic league. But outside of the SHL, they don't really have a pipeline to success. Look at what Germany's done. They've got the Oberliga at the third tier. They got the Del 2 and then the Del. And they have constantly guys going over there, either starting their career, finishing their career, looking for a change of scenery. I mean, Germany is thriving when it comes to hockey. You see guys from the college ranks go over there to play in the third league. They get a game in the Del 2. They go back up and down. It is the closest thing to the North American professional model in Europe that there is, Germany. And I'm really excited to see this Global Series games in 27-28 with Marco Sturm and JJ Peterka, the Boston Bruins. It was announced today that they're going to be playing a few games over in Germany next season. So that's going to grow the game. Add into the fact the continued success of Leon Draisaitl. Germany is in a fabulous place for hockey, and you may have people from North America traveling to Berlin just to watch Eisbären Berlin play the guys over at Adler Mannheim. So, and you look at coaching even. You know who the coach of Adler Mannheim is? Guy named Dallas Eakins, who coached for the Anaheim Ducks for a number of years. The LA Kings own Eisbären Berlin, which has so many different Dell championships. I believe they've won the past 2 or 3 in a row. So this is a league and a country that is high octane hockey, and it's growing at an exponential rate.
Yeah, really excited to see what this partnership brings to Germany and to the game of hockey as a whole. Want to wrap up today with some news that we got this week from the Columbus Blue Jackets, and that is that Elvis Merzlikins, goaltender, has undergone successful shoulder surgery that happened on Monday. There is no timeline for his return right now. So in 30 games last season, Merzlikins had a 14-11-3 record, a 3.40 goals against average, and 883 save percentage with 1 shutout. So obviously not exactly stellar numbers from him. Mike, how much does this worry you for the Blue Jackets season, if at all? I mean, we've kind of started to see the emergence of Jet Greaves in Columbus, but knowing what the goaltending situation is there, how much does this, do you think, if at all, impact the outlook for the Blue Jackets season?
Well, I think you looked at what was going to be the case with the Blue Jackets this year, and you expected Greaves, being a younger goalie, that he would probably play the amount of games he played last year, which was 55 games. But the 29 games remaining could be the difference between them being competitive for the playoffs and not making the playoffs at all. And in Merzlikins, I thought he was a candidate for a potential buyout. But maybe this injury would have prevented that from being the case, depending on how long it takes them. And right now, the only veteran goaltender they have in the pipeline is Phoenix Copley, who's 34 years old. I would say that Don Waddell should maybe give Connor Ingram a call, or James Reimer, or somebody, one of these veteran backups, because you don't know how long it's going to take for Merzlikins, and he's going to go on a long-term injury. But they're $14 million under the cap, so they're not going to get cap relief. So it's a situation where they need to find a backup to spell Greaves, especially with the schedule going from 82 to 84 games. That's just 2 more games to play.
Yeah, Mike mentioned a couple of them, but Frank, still some goaltenders out there without new contracts for the 2026-27 season. But I mean, when you look at Merzlikins, and obviously coming off a rough season for him, rough season with Columbus, do you think this really impacts the team's outlook that much, not having him there? And where do you think they go from here?
I think it benefits Merzlikins to take some time and fully recover. I mentioned it with Connor Bedard. Him being out of the lineup could ignite a fire under him. I think the same thing could happen with Elvis Merzlikins. But I think for the team as a whole, Merzlikins is kind of a character guy in that room from all intents and purposes that I've read. And he's the kind of guy you want around the room. And not having him could go boom or bust. You could say, we need to win for Elvis, or Elvis isn't here. What are we going to do? And, it's been a rough off season for Columbus, especially, on the media side with the way they've handled things in the broadcast booth and on the journalistic side. And this just is another straw on the pile, so to speak, for the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, there's also the Zach Werenski of it all. I mean, obviously that situation, that storyline doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. So lots going on in Columbus, not necessarily all of it good. Of course, if you want to read any more about anything that's been going on with the Columbus Blue Jackets or with any of the teams or the players that we have discussed here on the show today, please head over to the Hockey News. It's been the go-to for all things hockey since 1947. 12 issues packed with game and player insights, plus a free issue to start. It's a must-have for any fan. Head to thn.com/free and grab your subscription today. That's going to do it for today's episode of The Wraparound. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in and listened to us talking some hockey today. We really do appreciate it. We're getting there. Training camp all just right around the corner, guys. We're almost to the end of August. But thank you, of course, to Michael Augello and Frank Zawrazky for joining me today. I'm Emma Lingan. This is The Wraparound, and we will see you next time.